All right. Thank you for tuning in to the Friend Forward podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Bayard Jackson, a relational health educator and author of the book, Fighting for Our Friendships. And it's my job to study what the research has to say about women's cooperation, communication, and conflict. And on today's episode, I want to talk about cynicism and the unsuspecting ways that it might be infiltrating your friendships. Let's start with this. Let's start with having a shared definition or a shared understanding of cynicism. Okay, cynicism is a major distrust in other people, or more specifically, believing that people are motivated by self-interest. Okay, you don't trust folks. Pretty much, right? And research finds that cynicism is on the rise. In the 70s, 50% of people agreed with the statement, I believe that most people can be trusted. By 2018, that 50% dropped to a little over 30%. That's huge. And it doesn't totally surprise me because that's consistent with other surveys I've seen, specifically at a Pew Research Center, that finds that we have a thinning trust in our government as well, a thinning trust in the education system and the healthcare system. So our once strong trust in these major, once very respected institutions, that's on the decline. So it doesn't surprise me that we also have a thinning trust for our neighbors, for other people, for our peers, right? So, what are the ways that this is impacting our friendships? And so, we're going to go through a couple things here today. First, we're going to look at cynicism and how it works. We're going to look at the ways that it impacts our friendships that we might not be aware of. We're going to take a little mini assessment so you can see where you are because cynicism is a spectrum. And then we're going to look at one mindset shift that slowly pulls you out of that attitude because it is costing you. And we'll talk about some of the costs in just a second. I want to anchor this conversation by telling you much of it has been pulled from this book that I recently read called Hope for Cynics. Hope for Cynics. It is so freaking good. I'm not getting paid to say that, but you need to read it if you just want to understand what's going on a large scale. So let's start with this. What happens to a society at large when people distrust each other? Because it's not just an individual thing, it has collective consequences on broader groups. So when they look at high trust nations, they find that they have improved well being, that they earn wealth at faster rates than low trust nations. They find that they are more involved in their communities, that they're healthier, that they donate more to meaningful causes, and that they have lower suicide rates. Okay, societies where they highly trust each other. And that makes sense to me because if I have a trust in other people, I'm more likely to share resources because I'm not believing that you're going to screw me over, right? That you don't have positive intentions. I'm more likely to let you in, work with you, work together on things. I don't have that as top of mind, and I'm not driven by those fears. So people show up differently when they have a reasonable trust in other people. There's research that finds that kids who are cynical, that they're more likely to have issues with the three big D's in the future: depression, drinking, and divorce. I want to focus on friendship now. What are ways that being a person who assumes the worst about people, what are some ways that that's impacting your friendships? Let me break it down for you. You may already be familiar with this new framework. It's the 5 domains of women's relational health. So when people say like, "Oh, I'm struggling with friendship and my platonic connections," yeah, well, in what area specifically? Because there are 5 domains. Your mindset, connections, which is all about your ability to form new connections from scratch. Then the third domain is momentum, which is all about deepening and enhancing your platonic relationships. Then there is conflict, which is all about navigating tensions in a relationship. That's inevitable. You need to have the skills and competence to do that. And then finally, renewal. The last domain is renewal, which is all about releasing friendships while maintaining some sense of optimism, right? Being released from a friendship without internalizing it and giving up, right? So those are the 5 domains of women's relational health. I want to focus on 3 of those domains and draw specific examples of how cynicism is probably impacting you in each of these. Let's start with connection, which is all about forming new friendships. A woman who has a distrust of people, a woman who believes that people are only out to gain for themselves. Here are some things that she might believe when it comes to the friend making process. One example, if somebody approaches her and they're being friendly, is she already suspecting that they want something? Is she already keeping her guard up because she's not going to get screwed, let's say, mistreated, taken advantage of by somebody who has ulterior motives? So somebody being kind to me, somebody showing interest in me, yeah, what do you really want? Also probably less likely to go up and initiate things with other people who are kind and look like potential candidates for friendship, because I might believe that, oh, people don't really want to be bothered. People don't really want to be friends these days. They only want people they can take advantage of or use. So I'm probably not initiating, going first, getting things started. I'm probably not attending events because I believe that people don't know how to be friends these days, right? Have you heard that lately or said that lately? Guilty? Anybody? So if you're thinking, man, it's been so hard to make friends, but you also simultaneously hold the idea that people are only self-interested and that they can't be trusted, and you've hardened yourself to that, well, I'm just saying, baby girl, there's connection there. Let's look at the domain, the relational health domain of momentum, which is all about deepening friendships, right? So maybe you have a lot of, surface level friends, but you want more quality friendships. Well, your cynicism is going to get in the way here too. Let's say you have a bunch of existing, relatively surface level friends, and you would want to go deeper, but you can't. And one of those blocks might be, well, because you believe that if somebody's sharing things with you and they're opening up with you, it's only because they want you to open up with them too. If I'm cynical about friendships with women specifically, I might be thinking things like, you better be careful opening up to other women because they're only going to weaponize that. So you got to keep your business to yourself. Is this sounding familiar? Has anybody had an aunt or your mom or a friend who has promoted that idea to you, likely in an effort to protect you? That's fair. But we're going to talk about the false safety of cynicism in just a second. I think about the way that you don't get to share of yourself and to be fully known because you don't offer any information, whether that's verbally or seeking support from people because you don't believe that they're really going to give it to you. You don't believe that they're going to show up at all. They're just going to let you down. So even when you actually need support, which is supposed to be you reaping the benefits of friendship, you don't make it known. You don't make your needs known. You don't make your desires known because people are just going to let you down. And then when we look at the domain of conflict, right? Because there's 5 total domains of women's relational health. When we look at the conflict domain, I've seen it show up there too. Maybe if you have a legitimate issue with a friend that you want to raise, you're experiencing tension, you don't feel like it's worthy of addressing because you might believe like, oh, well, if you have an issue with a friend, there's no point in saying anything because it's just going to be drama. You know how people are, you know how women are, right? If you sense that she's upset with you and this is an opportunity to clarify or to ask her, you don't, because you just assume. Like if we're making assumptions around people's motivations and we believe that people just are inherently untrustworthy, it impacts us at every level, forming friendships, deepening friendships, and navigating tensions, which is important because the research shows that on the other side of healthy conflict, people report feeling closer to one another. So long term, if we don't get this right and we don't find a way to melt that hardness through some hope, but if we don't do that, we risk not ever really knowing other people. We risk not ever being intimately known ourselves, right? So if you've ever said, I just want people who get me and they just like understand, they just, right, yeah, sweetie, that's only possible through these gradual, consistent, and courageous bids of trust with others. That's the only way that's ever possible. You also will never know true community. And I'm going to say that unequivocally. You will never know it. Let's then take like a little mini assessment so you can see where you are on the spectrum, because it is a spectrum. And then finally, let's end with how you can pull out of it. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Friend Forward podcast. Remember, full episodes are available exclusively on our Patreon, which we refer to as office hours, and we'd love to have you join us. You can join anytime by visiting betterfemalefriendships.com/podcast. I hope to see you over there.
Let's go.
So as I was reading